Hello, everyone.
How's it going?
Okay, so we'll start right away. I think we do have a few people. We have 15 people for now. We'll directly get into it. Hi everyone. Thank you very much for joining today's webinar organized by Greenly. So on my side, I'm Soline Medrinal. I'm the head of partnerships at Greenly, and it's a pleasure to have you with us. Today, we'll explore why it's time to change the way we think about carbon management. So usually when companies are facing growing financial, regulatory pressures, carbon management is often seen as a burden, as a constraint, something that you can postpone to later. Today, we'll try to flip that perspective, to think differently, and we'll show why tackling this topic now is actually one of the best and the smartest business decisions you can make. So we'll have a look at carbon management differently through business lens, using language your CFO understands, and focusing how it can really create value, reduce the risks, and strengthen your company's leadership position. So we are going to structure we are going to have first 45 minutes. We have 45 minutes ahead. We are going to divide the discussions into 3 parts. First, we are going to cover the direct financial benefits of an effective carbon management. This is going to be the largest part. We'll spend most of the time on this part. Secondly, we are going to talk about the indirect benefits, meaning how it helps to mitigate the risks, to improve resilience. And last part, we are going to discuss how proactive carbon management develops climate leadership and helps you position your company ahead of the curve. So we'll have these 3 parts discussed, and we'll keep all the questions. We'll try to cover all the questions at the very end. So I will be the timekeeper. And so to discuss these different elements, I have the pleasure to have with me 2 outstanding speakers. So first we have Logan Tate. Logan, if you want to introduce yourself and explain us a bit what True Limited is doing, go ahead.
Hi everyone. So I'm Logan Tate and I'm here on behalf of True. And I mean, first and foremost, I'm a certified Greenly implementation partner, and we are Greenly Pro partners, which we are very proud of. And I work closely with Celine and the Greenly team every day, which is awesome. And my background's really in corporate sustainability and helping organizations to solve business challenges with sustainability solutions. And I'm a bit of a tech enthusiast and an AI tinkerer. So I really relate to using the Greenly platform and enjoyed a lot. Makes my life a lot easier, and I've seen some brilliant outcomes from being a part of them. And so we partner with all sorts of organizations of different sizes to really help them embrace complexity and turn sustainability into an advantage. And at True, we're a bespoke sustainability consultancy. So we're based in Jersey, but we have a global reach. We've got partners all over the world, from South Africa to the UK, Australia, New Zealand, the USA. So really a nice broad coverage. And we like to do things a bit differently here at True. And one of the things we've done is embrace innovative and impactful tech. And so we use solutions just like Greenly kind of to improve the efficiency and speed and quality of consulting services so that businesses can kind of jump onto the very needed sustainability revolution that we're undergoing in corporate spaces. And so at True, we do everything from carbon management, which is largely our relationship to Greenly, but we do things like double materiality and strategy setting, sustainability training, and have a lot of experience across the corporate landscape through many different industries. And yeah, we like to meet you guys wherever you are, and that will be a lot of the lens of today, helping you to understand, no matter if you're quite advanced in your sustainability journey or you're just starting out, we like to meet you where we are. And we're very proud to work both with Greenly and with Andium. And we have Michael on the call from Andium Homes.
Perfect transition to you, Michael. Go ahead. So Michael has a little issue with the mic, with the video. So
yeah, I've had quite a lot of technical issues in the last 15 minutes. So apologies to everyone. But no, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to kind of talk to you today. About me, my name is Michael Ruin, and I'm a chartered building surveyor. I'm also a chartered member of the Institute of Housing. I'm not a sustainability practitioner, but I have been on the brilliant sustainability leadership program at the University of Cambridge, and but I am, and the company that I work for are users of the Greenly tool, with support from Logan and his team as well. But just to provide maybe a little bit of context to people on the call. We live in Jersey in the Channel Islands, as Logan mentioned. So near to France, actually, Selena. We can listen to French radio, so we're not far from you. But we have our own government and laws, and it only has a population of 100,000 people. So the impact the changes that we make has quite a tangible impact to the communities and our environment around us. So I'm very proud to work for Andium. We're a progressive social housing provider. We are the largest housing provider in the Channel Islands, and we manage about 5,300 homes, which accounts to about 10% of the population. And that goes back to my point where the changes that we make have quite an impact on our surrounding communities. We're also a developer, so whilst we manage a lot of properties, we also develop properties for first-time buyers, and we currently have about 600 homes in construction, both flatted and housing schemes. So it is a privilege to be here, and I hope I can share some of my experience from my kind of industry.
Perfect. Thank you, Logan. Thank you, Michael. Great to have you on stage. Let's directly dive into the first topic, which is what are the direct financial benefits of doing carbon management right now. So before we dive into your experience, Michael, let's understand the landscape. Let's frame it a bit with Logan. So to frame this, key questions for you, Logan. When we talk about ROI, what are we actually talking about? If you give us a bit of a definition first. And then can you break down the different revenue opportunities and mention as well the operational savings? So big question. Three big questions for you.
A big question. So I mean, return on investment, that's basically what ROI means, right? But that's at a very superficial level. So how I think we approach this is you got to keep it simple and practical, and to understand how carbon work actually helps organization, you have to get out of that abstract and get more into the tangible deal of it. So I mean, tangible ROI is not a philosophy, it's something concrete. So it's really the business value that you see in your everyday operations when you invest in carbon management platforms and capacity building and skills. And that comes out in a number of different ways, that return on investment. So, I mean, it might be cash that you save, it might be time that you reclaim, or it could be problems that you avoid. Problems is just a sweeping statement for things like risk and whatnot. And I mean, for me, it's kind of the net business benefits of what comes out of the bottom once you've implemented a system like this. And as I mentioned, you might have direct savings, and that'll come from lower energy usage, not having to do as much maintenance. I know this is a really big deal for Michael at Andium as well. Having less waste as well. A lot of people speak about building circularity into your business models, and it's very important for organizations to take this approach because less waste, more sustainable, but you can only really manage those processes through good management systems. And you also get lots more revenue benefits. So while that might not seem like a saving or whatnot, it usually leads to better outcomes with things like tenders or green services. And I'm sure I'll cover it later, but you'll also see how better carbon management lets you access more cost-effective funding, which is really big for businesses that are growing and sort of looking to expand. I mentioned briefly as well that you kind of reclaim both time and capacity. So having a good management platform releases the human burden of manual labor. So not having to go through reporting cycles as tediously, not having to scrape data from all different places and have huge teams and involved. Having a carbon management process can free up a lot of time and energy and effort and reclaim that time for your business so that it can be reinvested. And you also avoid costs and losses down the line when you invest in good carbon management, because you can avoid things like regulatory fines, or maybe your suppliers are going to have big issues because they are high emissive suppliers. And by identifying that through something like supplier engagement, that you can only do when you have a good carbon management platform in place, you avoid something like that. And then I suppose once you've done all of that and you're seeing this tangible outcome, you need to then translate that into a business language that people understand. And as we know, CFOs kind of hold the purse strings always. And so when we're thinking about carbon and looking at your return on investment, what you want to do is you want to put it into a dialect that a CFO can relate to. So from a practical point of view, you start speaking about carbon management impacts from a cash flow point of view, from payback, from risk reduction, and that'll help you kind of scale the universe of carbon management within your organization. And from an anecdotal point of view, kind of what I've seen is a lot of the time the real tangible stuff is a lot quieter, and you notice it months after you've started doing the work. There's some implementations that you come in and it changes things from day one, like anybody who's changed their lights to energy saving LEDs and now have a whiter light in their office will know that's like something so tangible. But when it comes to return on investment, when you're managing your carbon, it takes a little bit longer. You'll see that you have to do fewer emergency fixes because you've noticed through your management process where you would have needed to do maintenance. Your procurement conversations are going a lot better. Maybe you have more time because you're not as bogged down by spreadsheets. You have better meetings with finance. There's really a lot of things that pile up over the long term that show you what that return on investment for using a good carbon management platform. Then I think there's, in the sustainability space, we kind of speak about risk and opportunity in the same vein. And so carbon management is inherently mitigating risk in your business, but also what it does is it brings you so many opportunities, specifically in revenue. And I think that that's where it ties to that return on investment. So being able to go out there and increase your revenue opportunities is so important. And from my research, from my understanding, from my experience, there are kind of three main buckets where you can get like more revenue opportunities from having a good carbon management system. So you can win more business, that's one. You can create new offers, and you can also unlock better finance, which I know I mentioned a little bit earlier. But when it comes to winning more business, both buyers and procurement teams are looking more and more at the sustainability side of their suppliers. And so if you can have an auditable carbon trail, some information that becomes way easy to access, you kind of reduce that procurement friction, and that'll increase your chance of winning contracts or keeping ones that you already have in play. And I think this comes down to the fact that both buyers and procurement teams really don't do well with uncertainty. And so if you can be easy to assess, if you can give them like good, clean, honest information about how you've managed your emissions, how you've measured them, how big they are, how intensive they are, you become much easier to buy from, especially in the long term, as we see things like the carbon border adjustment mechanism coming into play and an increase in regulation. One statistic that I saw about this is almost 40% of business-to-business customers say that they would switch suppliers if the sustainability standards aren't met. And I know that that's right now still, there's 60% who wouldn't, but that's a growing figure. My position on it is that we'll only see this this figure growing in the next few years. And there's more and more sustainability questions in RFPs. And we've seen that in many procurement processes. ESG now can account for something like between 10 and 50% of the total evaluation of whether you're going to partner with somebody. And so fundamentally, if you know your numbers and you're able to share them easily, you become way more easy to partner with, and that helps you to win new work. But as I mentioned as well, there's the opportunity for more commercial offers, because carbon work lets you package your services a little bit differently. And so if you got something like a low carbon maintenance contract, or you're retrofitting sort of as a service, or any other alternative approaches, you can come in with high level information that is far more usable. And a lot of the time, the early movers here capture market share and command a clearer value proposition. And as I mentioned earlier, you have far better access to both pricing and finance. So you'll get ESG and sustainability disclosure can really help you to get more funding, because the conversations are cleaner and ultimately more lucrative. Lenders and investors have become more favorable towards borrowers with credible reporting. And I think that being able to report credibly across your entire business is super helpful, because it kind of shows that you've got your affairs in order. So they're more likely to lend you money if you're good on your numbers and you know what's going on. But also those borrowing terms can be brought down because you understand your risk model better. So it's not like it's magic or anything, but it's more about reducing that perceived risk for anybody who's going to be, or any organization that's going to be lending to you. And so that sustainability linked facility makes bond issuance far more marketable and accessible. But I suppose there's also quite a few secondary revenue effects that you could pull in. Transparency definitely improves your customer trust. So if you are able to speak credibly about your sort of carbon emissions and how you're managing these, you hopefully going to attract more customers and retain ones that you've got, and people will speak more favorably about your business. You got to do that in a credible way. You can't do that in a way that is disingenuous or greenwashes. And you can also win more premium or preferential procurement treatment, as I mentioned, which again is super helpful. And then, Celine, will you remind me what your third question was?
No, I think you covered. I mean, you framed it very well. It was more about, so first it was like new business opportunities, and then the operational savings. But I think you covered it already.
I mean, there are, just to touch on operational savings quickly, there are quite a few things, but I mean, again, probably three main ones. So you can reduce your costs. This was something that I alluded to already, just about maintenance, but small actions, knowing where you have quite energy intensive processes, by mapping your sort of carbon management space in your organization, you might want to swap to things like efficient lighting, etc., that help you to like bring down the cost of your operations. And this is super practical to do as well. I mean, you might want to look at like one element of your business, whether it's the lights, or asking yourself a question like, which routine fault might cost you more time or energy than something else. Once you've mapped this by using a carbon management platform, it's far easier to identify.
Very clear. Thank you, Logan. So I see that time is flying. So if I do a very quick recap of this, so regarding new business opportunities, it's possible if you're a B2B to win more RFPs, because sustainability topics is no really the rule. You have also the possibility, if you're a B2C company, to sell more products, because it has an impact on the consumer consideration of your product. It increases your credibility. Then it creates operational savings. And lastly, you can also get more interesting fundings. Actually, we also do develop at Greenly some interesting partnership with some banks that are actually providing preferred rates to companies that are actually showing a trajectory, a carbon trajectory. So good. Now, Michael, it would be great to understand from your perspective at Andium how you are living it on the ground. I know you have lots of concrete examples to explain how you see these tangible benefits.
Yeah, no, it's really good to hear from Logan there, because a lot of the examples he provided as opportunities, really, we've lived a lot of them, and it's and I'm actually glad we're in the 40%, Logan, as well, of as a company that will bring on suppliers that are like those environmental aspects of their offer as well. But just to provide an example, really, and it's about that conversation with the CFO or the head of finance or whatever it is. in the companies. We used to burn about 1.7 million liters of oil annually, heating oil for our homes, and that came with a high maintenance cost. That had leaks, boiler failures, and also had a risk of environmental issues through tanks leaking and things like that. So that was really the conversation about trying to mitigate those risks and reduce OPEX costs as well. And through that kind of conversation, we knew we were reducing our carbon footprint as well. But it was about selling it on those terms to people that cared about money more so. And we moved from that 1.7 million liters of heating oil annually to zero in kind of the last 15 years. And moving to that we have low carbon electricity in Jersey. It comes from France, so it's all a lot of it's nuclear and renewable. And we were able to change all of our heating systems over to electric, and that has seen our carbon footprint probably reduce by around 80%. If we had a tool like Greenly's, we would have been able to say exactly how much it dropped off. But having that tool allows us to target areas that have the most impact to our community and also the environment. But like I said, we're a developer as well, and we obviously buy a lot of material in that comes in on boats and things like that. So we had to look at ways that we can reduce our carbon footprint in building property as well, building homes for people, and that's quite difficult when you've got a bit of water in between you and whether that's France or the UK. And so we had to come up with innovative ideas to deliver those targets. But again, the conversation was about we need to deliver our targets quickly, efficiently, and for the lowest amount of cost. At the same time, that has a carbon benefit. So it had a cost benefit and a carbon benefit. And some of those new ways of building we've now completed, and such as moving from concrete frame buildings to light gauge steel frame buildings and closed panel systems. It meant we kept the costs down. It was easier to put on the boat, and it can be as part of that cyclical journey, so that cyclical economy. We also used buildings we're demolishing, turned them into aggregate on site, and used it as part of the foundations as well. But in reality, and as well, although it saved time, saved costs, it also reduced our carbon footprint of in between. If you compare one of our concrete frame buildings to our light gauge steel frame buildings, it reduced that carbon footprint by 25%. So there's some real tangible opportunities that can be had there. And we had a target to get to. We had to build so many homes, and we're getting to the end of that journey now. But that as a responsible social housing landlord, we're not stopping there. People always need homes, and so what we're doing next is bringing in a kind of hybrid development and refurbishment pipeline program, and that again puts a new lease of life into some of the buildings in terms of retrofit, and looking at putting new technologies into those buildings to help people reduce bills and help people reduce their own carbon footprint as well. And part of that is about bringing in kind of nudging people towards a different a kind of a way of living as well. So, for example, we've introduced throughout the all of our stock is electric car shared network, and this is operated by a partner, EV on Ireland. and that allows people to make choices on whether or not how they decide to get to work, whether to use their bike, to use a car, and whether or not actually to own a car. And what we've seen as part of that, especially on our estates where we sell to first-time buyers, people are opting not to buy parking spaces and use the car share network and public transport and things like that. So it's all about slowly changing people's views towards some of these things. And again, just going back to some of Logan's examples, we've changed about 60% of our stock to LED in the communal areas, and that's seeing a huge difference in our electrical bills as well. So all these things sometimes have a direct effect on your ongoing costs. And then the last kind of example, really, Logan mentioned about getting cheaper rates from investors and things like that from in terms of loans. So we went to market last year for a £100 million bond. That was the first Jersey's first social bond, and we're very proud of that. But because of the way we were accounting with the Greenly tool, as well as other things, we were able to demonstrate really clearly that where we were on that journey, and because of that, we were able to get very low rates in terms for borrowing money, which it reduces cost across that period. So I know I've dumped quite a few things on there, but this is a journey, and if you can demonstrate tangible benefits and find ways to decrease risk whilst decreasing risk to your business, the journey does become easier.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Very, very insightful. So I see time is flying, so I will again switch to part 2, but we'll keep, the CFO language for the very end when we're going to do kind of a recap of how you are actually leveraging all these efforts, all these concrete examples to actually share with all your company, I mean, internally and externally, this value that you're actually bringing when it comes to new business or operational savings. So let's keep that for the what follows. So Logan, switching to the part 2 regarding the indirect benefits, so the 2 different parts we wanted to cover regarding like how it's important to stay compliant, what's the cost of non-compliance, how to address the risk across your supply chain. If I ask you to do that, to cover this in 3 minutes before we dive into examples, you can. Challenge accepted.
No worries. I can. I'll try not to speak too quickly, but cover everything. I mean, a proactive climate strategy is kind of the best way to stay ahead of the tightening regulations. So I mean, I think the big ones that are relevant for most participants on this call would be the CSRD and CBAM, which I mentioned earlier. And these frameworks start mandating carbon measurement and disclosure, which becomes very important. And you're going to carry non-compliance fines, and these will be very heavy if you don't comply. I think in some cases in Germany, it can be up to 10 million euros as a fine, and also serious reputational damage. If you think of some really big companies over the last while who've had some environmental lawsuits or bad information coming out about them, it's seriously impactful. But that's more like a general compliance risk. The biggest risk of non-compliance is actually the erosion of the value of your supply chain and your assets without you knowing, because carbon management allows you to quantify and understand a lot of the climate risk that you're exposed to. And so if you're climate inactive or you have inefficient suppliers, you're creating hidden exposure in your supply chain and in your business model, that if something goes wrong, you could be exposed either financially or operationally or reputationally. And I think that's really the crux of it. This is no longer just a feel-good story that, we should emit less carbon, we should sequester more, we should be kinder and tread lighter on the planet. This, for businesses, has become a very tangible risk that if you don't become resilient to these shocks, your business is really, really going to suffer. And I think investors and lenders are now starting to understand this, and they're applying sustainability criteria when they invest. And so if you have weak disclosure, you're going to narrow your access to capital by quite a lot. Yeah. And I think when it comes to your supply chain, that's where most organizations' emissions actually sit. So this is where the exposure is. And so proactive strategy is going to give you the tools to find and prioritize and neutralize those threats before they become real, tangible business problems sitting on your balance sheet. And if you're ignoring your suppliers, you're carrying an invisible risk here, as I mentioned, and that's going to become a valuation issue.
Great. Thanks for setting the context, Logan. Michael, how does this resonate with your experience?
Yeah, so when, like I mentioned before, when we were going to market for the £100 million bond, it was very evident that the banks were looking at a lot of these risks and trying to understand if you are a safe business to loan to, risk plays a big part in how they calculate the rates they give you. So it was really important for us that we showed a robust kind of view towards risk. And one of those examples is flooding and how we manage flood risk across our stock. What frameworks we have in place to ensure that we're looking at all these risks. And one of the frameworks that we sign up to as part of our strategy is the sustainability reporting standards for social housing, and that's kind of a robust framework to make sure that you're covering, because a lot of this can be quite daunting. There's a lot of stuff out there and lots of different frameworks. So it's trying to find the right framework that's good for your company to help you build help you look at the right risks and help you look at the right strategies and plans to make sure your company is delivering what it should be now, but also on the horizon, so 30 years time and things like that. Just picking up on the kind of supply chain and the procurement. There's, if you're buying in from anything, it doesn't matter what it is, you can help your scope 3 and those kind of emissions by saying to suppliers, and in our case, saying to our maintenance suppliers, if you're going to do any work with us for the next 5 years on this 5-year contract or whatever it is, we want you to have a carbon neutral roadmap for your company for the next, say, first 2 years of the contract, and we want you to have a plan to become carbon neutral by a certain time. Those are terms you can dictate under competitive conditions as well. So you're getting not only value for money for your suppliers being carbon neutral, but you're also creating that culture change with suppliers that they that kind of encourages them to change the way they look at their own businesses as well. So that's basically what I would add to that.
Perfect. Very interesting. And so before we switch to climate leadership, if we have time, it would be great to have your point of view, maybe from both, on how, so we understand then it's very important to be able to communicate internally, externally, but how do you make this return on investment visible to your then CFO, so that it helps you, to justify the value of what you're doing, and finally the budget you need, to complete your carbon management and decarbonization trajectories may seem maybe ridiculous compared to all the value that having this strategy brings to the business? How do you translate it? Is it easy? Do you have a specific time in the year you're focusing on that? Like, it would be great to understand how to shed light on that.
I think I, from my perspective, so I often come in as a partner to these organizations, and the teams that I get to work with most of the time are not necessarily the financial teams. So it would be a team that oversees risk or compliance or sustainability / ESG, depending on the organization. And so very often operations is a big one as well. Very often these are the teams that are kind of running and managing the carbon management process, working with me when it comes to Greenly. And they then have to feed that back into a completely different audience, which might be the board or a CFO that then takes it to the board. And that requires a level of translation. So somebody who's very operational might not understand how to speak the finance language that the CFO is hoping to hear. And so very often what I notice is there's great impact happening in businesses, but that's not being reflected up the value chain because the two different stakeholders, the two different people within the business speak different languages. And so one might speak about efficiency or not having as much downtime, and the other might speak about cash flow. And sometimes you need that kind of edge walker that holds the complexity and is able to say, oh, you're actually talking about the same thing. And when you're implementing a carbon management platform, the big thing that comes out of it is reporting, the retrospective look back on what has actually happened. That gives you the information, and to get that in an ordered way that uses non-technical, plain language without jargon and is business oriented and decision useful. I think that's the way you take it forward. And so presentation is huge. It's got to look good, and it's got to fit into a format that business leaders and decision makers are familiar with. So often it's reports, PDFs, slide decks that are easy to share and send around. That's kind of how I see teams translating what is quite a complex manner of issues and then taking it forward so that it can be built upon.
It requires a bit of effort, but it does worth it.
For sure. And I mean,
Cool.
Greenly helps a lot with that. There's a lot of report automation, and so you get to that a lot quicker.
Michael, you have a specific kind of ritual to make this, all the examples you mentioned in the first part and the second, like how you make this visible to the rest of your team?
I kind of actually have a really recent example where, because this time of year we are putting our budgets together for the next year and beyond, and one of the elements in the budget I put forward to our finance colleagues was the installation of solar to a lot of our older houses. Now, I had the direct question of what's our return on an investment, and I think if you do the preparation and you talk the same language and you come from where they are, but at the same time link it back to your own company's values, you're on a good grounding to have that negotiation, and it is a negotiation at the end of the day. But I'll just give you an example where we've used actual data and kind of linking back to our so the way I came about it was want to put solar on. This is not we're not putting solar on these houses because it's for environmental reasons. We're doing it for a social reason. And by saying that's going back to our company's values, but also said, across our properties, electricity prices have gone up in 20% the last two years. Mold issues have gone up by 39% in the last kind of 3 years. But at the same time, the kilowatt usage in some of these houses has gone down. So that's telling me that people with electricity prices going up, the people are not using the heating as much which is creating mold issues and things like that. The other side of it was if we spend say £6,000 putting solar panels on, that might reduce our clients' bills by 30%. Now I'd have to spend probably 6 times that to insulate the property to get that same saving. So, but not only that, we can install solar panels across our whole stock in a very short period of time. But retrofitting might take 30 years. So it's about talking in that way and trying to show your point of view whilst ticking all their problems off as well. So hopefully that's a kind of good recent example.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. Great. So we have 4 minutes left. If you have any questions, feel free to get them in the chat. In the meantime, so yeah, we covered the 2 first part. There was the third part that was more about climate leadership, meaning like how you make sure as a company to empower people to use sustainability to foster innovation and to make a long-term like strategic advantage, meaning that you stay ahead, of regulation, you adopt a really proactive approach that can be also very good and safe for your business. If you don't have any question, I think we can directly go to conclusion. So we can have a few more words from you, Logan, and from you, Michael, and maybe you can tackle a bit how you see also climate leadership from your perspective. So yeah, if you have any final thought before I close the conversation, go ahead, Logan.
Yeah, so I mean, just on climate leadership, I'll be honest, building the real ownership and culture is the hard human work in all of this. And platforms like Greenly and technology definitely helps, but it's people and the way we run the programs that actually make an impact. And so we have to remember that these are socio-technical systems that are colliding here for socio-ecological systems. And so we have to start with the people, not necessarily the data. Understand who's involved in that process, your stakeholders, make it practical, make it easy to do upfront, and assign people with ownership and passion in your organization to kind of fly this flag and run with it. And I guess my ultimate takeaway would be that the worlds of sustainability and risk are converging more and more each day. We see it in the way people have begun to set frameworks and regulation. We see it with how markets have begun pricing finance and access to finance. And there are so many signals in the market that prove that sustainability comes with sustainability risk and opportunity. And I think the most productive and efficient first step you can take is getting your house in order and implementing something like a carbon management system that will help you to understand where your climate risks lie, so you can proactively manage them.
Perfect. Michael, you have a final thought before I finalize the conclusion?
Just kind of just picking up what Logan said. Really, it's really important. We have a couple of different.
We kind of lost you, me, Michael. We don't hear you very well. No?
Hello.
Yeah, no. Kind of lost you. If you want, I start the conclusion, and then you can interrupt me. So just to conclude, so we managed to cover the 3 parts. So carbon management, the direct financial ROI, direct benefits, new business, operational savings, loans. We talked about how we managed to build resilience across your operation, across supply chain, your brand, how it reduced risks and resilience, and then a little bit about climate leadership. On our side at Greenly, so we provide a platform to kind of streamline the work. We work with partners as well to support companies both with the tech and the advisory work on top to actually translate. So we work on, of course, the platform helps to streamline the internal and external communication, but it's so very good to be supported by a partner, a consultancy to translate that work. On our side at Greenly, we also worked on an ROI guide that we'll be able to share with you after this webinar. And we also worked, and it's going to be really soon, on an ROI calculator, because we know it's an additional work also to build, the case to share internally and externally. But we are currently releasing an ROI calculator we'll be able to share with you as well. So thanks so much, Logan. Thank you, Michael, for sharing your insights, your experience. It made the discussion very practical and concrete. We hope you enjoyed it, and happy to get your feedback afterwards. And thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining. Thanks for having me, Celine.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again. Thank you, Michael.